Starting tomorrow, a new California law will prohibit drivers under age 18 from using voice-activated texting like Siri while behind the wheel. And all 10 University of California campuses will ban tobacco products, including e-cigarettes. And employers may no longer fire victims of domestic violence. Here to explain a few more of the new broad-reaching laws is attorney and legal analyst Dan Eaton. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Peggy.
Well, we've got until July 1st until California's minimum wage goes up to $9 an hour, but it's not going to stop there. Tell us more about that.
It's not, actually. The last time the minimum wage in our state was raised was in 2008. July 1st, it goes up to $9 an hour, but then by the same piece of legislation, it will go up on January 1st, 2016 to $10 an hour. So it'll keep going up.
And the federal government's watching us on this one.
The federal government and other states have enacted laws. California still won't be the highest minimum wage. Washington's at $9.25 roughly. But the federal government is taking serious steps at looking at raising it to $10.10 by 2016. And there's a report in yesterday's New York Times that the Democrats intend to nationalize this issue, that is to make it a national issue in the coming elections, claiming it's an issue of fairness.
Okay. Now, we just touched on the domestic violence and stalker protection laws, right. But there's another one about retaliation of unlawful employer activity. Mm-hmm. Explain that whistleblower law for us.
Well, it's an interesting issue. It applies to undocumented immigrants who complain about working conditions such as their wages or unsafe conditions. And it says that an employer cannot threaten to retaliate against them for making those complaints by reporting them to federal immigration authorities. The sponsors said, look, undocumented immigrants are the most vulnerable workers in the state, and we cannot chill their right to make these complaints.
And on retaliation with employers and employees, there's also another caveat to that with managers, correct?
Well, that's right, exactly. I mean, the issue is, well, look, if there's a manager who does it, is it a rogue manager? Employers were very upset about this law because you're looking at potentially fines in the tens of thousands of dollars and yanking their license for some rogue supervisor. So judges are going to have some leeway to determine whether the employer really knew what it was doing if a particular threat is made to an undocumented immigrant.
Well, San Diego heard a lot about the definition of sexual harassment last year with the mayor's scandal. How will the existing law be changed in 2014?
Well, not a lot, actually, Peggy. In fact, what this law does is it simply clarifies that sexual harassment doesn't just mean a harassment based on sexual interest. It also relates to harassment based on the gender of the victim. And it basically puts that into law and makes it very clear. But the case law is very clear on this point. And, you know, it's like chicken soup. A little clarity in this area of the law couldn't hurt.
Okay, let's talk about money. What does the financial literacy law require of middle and high school students? It was fascinating when I looked at that.
Well, it is because financial illiteracy has such a tremendous impact on the state's economy. And what it would do is it would require there to be financial education, such as a budget balancing and so forth, from ages 7 to 12 going
or
forward.
7th grade?
7th grade.
Right.
Grades 7 through 12. That's what I meant. So that students will get out of high school at least having a strong base of what it means to engage in financially responsible behavior, so that bounce checks will not happen as much and people will not have to rely on certain kinds of loans.
When it comes to kids, you actually introduced me to a new law that will prohibit a parent from inheriting a child's estate based on certain conditions?
Yeah, of course, no parent wants their child to predecease them, so heaven forbid that should happen. But if it does, this law says if you are estranged from your child, if you haven't been in communications, if your parental rights have been terminated, you can't inherit their estate. So if you're raising the next Steve Jobs, be nice to your child. Send them a card. Call them, even if they don't call you necessarily.
Be nice to kids.
Be nice to kids.
Nice
exactly.
To kids.
That's the message.
Okay. Now, California became the first state in the nation with very specific laws for websites that track personal information. Tell us about that and what the law requires.
It's about cookies, Peggy, and it's about transparency. What it requires is for commercial websites to let you know, the consumers to know what their policies are with regard to that and how they respond to do not track requests. It doesn't require them to honor do not track requests, understand, Stan, but it does require them to let you know what they're doing with your data. And that's very important because the thinking is that more information to consumers will result in a more educated consumer that can choose not to patronize certain websites if their policies on tracking are not to their liking.
So they have to disclose it.
They have to disclose it. That's right.
I see. Well, Attorney Dan Eaton and legal analyst Dan Eaton, thanks very much, and a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, Peggy.